Horror films give a tense feeling of shock, fear, and disgust. Horror films are unsettling movies that strive to elicit the emotions of fear, disgust, and horror from its viewers.
Horror films tap into viewers' hidden worst fears, revulsions, and the terror of the unknown. Horror films have a basic core element to make the genre what it is. It uses the different factors and ideas from genres such as sci fi, fantasy, psychological thriller, and action.
Different examples of locations are malls, where they're all foggy and disgusting. Also, um, isolated places like woods, or even something so simple as an empty motorway.
Horror films started from Gothic literature tradition in the 18th and 19th century in the tales of terror and often repressed sexuality in the historical setting of dark and brooding menace. Examples of the first horror films were Frankenstein, Dracula, Werewolf, and The Mummy, which all derived from novels.
The differences between these horror films and now and then went a beginning of classic gothic horror, deriving from a novel to gory and typical horror films with predictable storylines. An example of this is Saw and Scream, because they are making many sequels that stick to the same narrative and the teen horror films kind of look and feel that almost are all the same but enjoy the blood and gore.
The way films were produced back in the day was that you were legally acquired to the novel's film rights. So you had to get permission from the writer to produce it into a film because in the past, Dracula had been filmed and remade by a company that didn't ask for the permission and it all had to get banned. So you always have to get your rights, which is the same in this industry now. Back in the 1930s, the first horror films were silent. So Dracula was silent with different sound effects. So it was more something you had to focus on the visuals and stuff, and which kind of made it more creepier because you couldn't really hear what was going on. Um, Films were created by photographs, so just like stop animation, you take pictures per second. So basically, you had to project an image with 24 different frames per second. So then you would move it, and it would be really jerky, and it would look like really like old fashioned, and that's the kind of style that they were going for.
Kodak was the first people to create the photographic camera with fixed focus lens of 35 millimeters. This camera was used to create stop motion films with pictures. It was very inexpensive and appealed to a wider audience. The the look of the was very basic. It was a black box. The black box for the reason is to keep all sources of light out, so you can get a clearer image of the focus you're going for. That way, you don't have anything interfering with any light leaks at all.
And now, um, the way films are produced are in like big studios with loads of people from different like pre-production and post-production and different actors, different lightings, multiple cameras. We basically have more choice of what we can do now, and I feel like back in the day they were very limited and they only had a few characters. But now, in the credits and stuff, it would say extras, and there's more job roles that now than there is back in the day.
Theatre started in the movie theatres in the 19th century, but groups of gathered people came together in an abandoned movie theatre and watched on a white screen. From then, it's moved on to cinemas and amphitheatres. Now, with technology, it started to go into videos, DVD, even 3D cinemas, laptops, smartphones, tablets, Netflix, I love film, and YouTube. And some cases, 4D, which gives a more of a you feel like you're in the movie because they do different things like where the chair shakes or say water squirts in your face and you smell the things they're smelling. One example they did of this when something not related to horror, but Heston did a smell touch scratch thing, and he actually brought the movie to life into the people of the viewers so they could actually feel like they're there.
Horror films are not just films, it's a genre. So the horror genre is more than just watching it on a screen. You can also see stuff on or hear stuff on the radio. They have radio stations. They have a horror channel that's on 66.6. and I'm not really sure what goes on there, but I'm sure it'd be like ghost stories and stuff affiliated with horror. There's also podcasts, books, audiobooks, tapes, the word of mouth, so like camp stories that you might tell your friends. So horror can be distributed in loads of different ways. Narrative structures are, they're not very strict in a way, so there isn't just like one narrative structure for horror. I feel like there's multiple structures, so it could go from, for example, A to Z, so from the start to the finish, with so basically a typical storyline starting from beginning to end, or Z to A when it starts from the end to the beginning, which could be quite interesting. And I feel that it makes a better film when the script is non-linear, so it's not like you don't really know what to kind of expect, or it can go from Z to A to Z. An example of a film that does that is Chain Letter, where it starts at the end and it goes from the beginning and then it goes back to the end. So at the beginning, you don't know it's the end until the end of the film. And yeah, so I feel like it could either be non-linear or linear. I think there's just a wide variety of what it can be. Um, what I've noticed that a lot of horror films do is that at the beginning of the horror film, they'll show you like a bit of a snippet to show someone like usually dying or something that shows what the film is about to be about. So it kind of gives the audience a bit of a thrill, a little bit of a chill, so they know what to expect in the film.
Ideology is a system of social beliefs that characterizes how a group or an individual thinks. Such things as beliefs, ideas, cultures, outlook, philosophy, theories. It could be anything.
However, although some people would agree that there's no ideology in horror, I believe that as a nation, as like it's normal for people to think that what you see in horror films is immoral. So stuff like killing, rape, everything that's gory and it just isn't familiar to our eyes because we see it as a crime. So I feel that there is some ideology because as a group of people, we believe that it's immoral, and there's different like religious groups and groups that would find it absurd and maybe it's not allowed to watch certain horror films in their culture and stuff. And yeah, it is illegal, so it is a crime and it does affect the world. It has been reported that many films have been reenacted by copying certain films. So, for example, films like Scream provide more information about how to kill somebody without being caught. Also, Saw, as a psychological thriller, can impact the unstable mind into copying the methods used to kill a person to gain that certain thrill of rush. And these type of films can also be dangerous because people do tend to identify with characters and identify with that image.
Horror films tend to use the reception study theory by allowing people to make their own choices and own decision and own interpretation of what they see and hear. Because it's an active theory, the audience can choose whether they want to watch the film or not.
It involves the uses of gratification theory because in order to make a choice and interpret what you see, this would rely on one's personality and what they like and what entertains them. It makes it active. In this day and age, the hypodermic needle theory would not be appropriate for horror films because it is not informing and educating an audience, but to entertain. You always have a choice, so you are not being brainwashed into watching something or believing anything. It's your own choice.
In a lot of horror films, the protagonists or multiple protagonists are usually Caucasian. In the British and American horror films, you will never see a lead from a minority country. However, they do have their own genre of horror films based on their culture. Japanese horror can include The Grudge and The Ring, and African culture can include black magic films showed on Mollywood, The African Channel, and Ben.
A lot of producers now use old horror films and remake them. There are multiple examples of this, and I feel that the horror films are getting worse and worse and losing its special quality. It also means that horror films can be made by absolutely anyone. In my opinion, I feel that horror films have lost its fear factor and are getting really worse, and they're really predictable storylines. And I feel that now that producers are reinforcing their trailers to be a lot scarier than the actual film. So it's got a lot to do with marketing and advertising to make people go and watch the film, and then you get there and it's really rubbish. So I feel like, the more we're into the years, the worse horror films are getting, and I felt that older horror films were a lot better and had better quality and were more memorable.
American horror films and British horror films are very much different. People would say that US dominating the horror genre at the moment and produce better productions than the UK. But I feel at the moment, yes, America is actually dominating because the sheer amount of how much they can produce in the year, while British producers can produce less in the year, but at a higher, better quality with better writing, in my opinion. For example, I find that 28 Days Later was a brilliant piece of work, and Creep especially because is London is London based and based in the London Underground, so a lot of tourists has been there, so they will know about it, and obviously the people who live in London will know about it. But it's made it that much more real, and the tense scenes they use when the that creature thing was come for her down the rail, and she had to run because that girl, she needs to behave. But
Another thing that I've noticed is that in all horror films, they have the same kind of characters. So you kind of know what to expect from the film when you see the actor or the actress, and yeah, in each film they have the same actors and actresses and stuff. So you have reoccurring actors and actresses showing that um, that the acting is quite consistent and stuff, and that they're not just throwing in random people from different genres. For like, so for example, someone that might be in a romantic comedy in a horror film wouldn't really work too well. There are more and more spoofs being created to mock horror films, which attracts a wider audience, including the people that prefer a subtle, funnier version of a horror film. I think the most popular spoofs, and I think spoofs really kind of started with like Scary Movie. The Scary Movie went into talking about Scream. Scary Movie 2 was about the poltergeist, which was in a haunted house, and I feel like all the films like pick quite a knowledgeable horror film that everybody knows of and makes it funny and makes it easier to watch, because I feel like it's kind of horror film is kind of thing like you either hate it or you love it. So I feel like everybody can love a spoof of a horror film because it's quite funny and it's not gory and it's entertaining, and usually you get some really funny characters and it's very popular.